Right, what's happening? Welcome back to the Construction Entrepreneur Podcast. Today's episode is all on the topic of being a boss versus being a leader. Massive difference between the two. The boss only gets so far. You've probably all had bosses that you haven't liked before in the past. You've worked for companies and you've got just basically a dick of a boss. Or you might have experienced someone in your life who's been an absolute brilliant leader and you just go, I would do anything for that person. And that's the person you want to be as a business owner. You want to be the leader, because I believe that leadership is lacking massively all over the UK, regardless of this industry. Leadership is a massive problem. There is just not enough good, strong, honest, decent people who step up to the plate and are really good, solid leaders. So I do believe that, a lack of leadership, you're not going to get the best out of your people, which business is all about people. Whatever way you look at it, people make shit happen in the business. So the better leader you are, the better people you're going to have, and the better leaders they are going to become below you as well, which is exactly what you want in a business. If you've got a business with no leadership, I can guarantee it's a business going nowhere. So it's really important to get right. You can do anything if you're a good leader. If you just nail these basic traits I'm going to talk through today in this episode, and you go, yep, bang, I do that, or maybe I need to improve on this one. I've got 10 key areas in this episode to look at and go, right, this is the stark difference. And this might highlight some stuff to you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, of just grey areas or areas that you're not very good at or you need to improve on. Or you might go, do you know what, fuck me, I'm really good at all 10 of them. So you're on a winner, you're absolutely killing it. So if you don't become a good leader, you're just going to be a mediocre boss. And this is what you do not want. You do not want that to be the case. You don't want people to work for you, and it's very transactional. It's a very much a 9 to 5 mentality. And a lot of people talk about this. They will say, oh, I've got people, they just clock in and clock out. They turn up at 5 to 9 or 1 minute to 9. And they can't wait to leave the door. That is a sure, guaranteed sign that you've just got a boss mentality and structure in the business. Leadership starts at the top. It absolutely starts at the top. The buck stops with the owners, shareholders of the business, the bosses. It is on your shoulders to instill this leadership mentality, and a mentality that's just completely different to a transactional thing of work, and that's what you do not want. So let's get into it. Stark differences between the boss and a leader. Number one, a boss just points the finger all the time, blames people, wants to pinpoint someone down and go, it's your fault this has happened, this is your problem, you're this, you're that. It's that mentality. Whereas a leader, proper leadership, the leader takes the responsibility of that, because any problem in the business, it is a responsibility of the owner of that business. So you've got to take ownership and look to improve. This is what a leader does. A leader doesn't sit there and just point the finger and then go, I'll forget about it, wipe my mouth, well, it's their fault, that's why it's happened. I've got bad labour, I've got a bad team, I've got a bad project manager, I've got a bad estimator, someone ordered it wrong, someone did this wrong, it's them. Whereas a leader takes ownership, steps back and goes, how do we stop this from happening again? What's the root cause of this problem? You take ownership of it and own your shit. If you own the business, something goes wrong in that business, it is your fault, it is your problem. You can never point the finger at someone else unless you're taking ownership for it yourself, and you've genuinely got someone who just doesn't do their job very well. But unless you are being the leader first, you cannot point the finger to anyone else. You've got to take ownership for it. Stark difference. Number two, a boss is reactive. They deal with shit as it's happened. It's already happened. The shit has already hit the fan. The boss is reactive and going, oh, why has this happened? Why has this gone wrong? Why does this job look like this? Why is that finished like this? Why has that staff member done this? Whereas a leader is proactive, is proactively looking ahead all the time and going, right, if we let's see, what's all the big problems that could happen? Where are the things that could go wrong on this? What's our risk areas? Let's be proactive on it and get ahead of it. Do the work ahead of it. It might mean staying at the office late one night and reviewing a job and going through the whole job before you set up on site, which is what you should do for every single job that you've got. It might be proactively having conversations with people that you can tell there's going to be a problem brewing there, or they're not going to quite do their job quite right because there's an external factor going on in their own life, or they haven't got the skill sets to deliver a job. You've got to be proactive all the time. When you're in a reactive state and you're dealing with shit that's already happened, you're fucked. There's only one way that can go. You just got to shovel that shit out of your way. That's the only option you've got. Whereas when you're proactive and you're looking ahead and you're going, right, let's just slow down a minute and go, right, what do we need to set up in the business to give us the best chances of success? What do you need to give every single person in that business so they've got the best chances of being successful at their job as well? You know, you can't look at it as a mentality of, well, I pay people to do that so they deal with it, and if they do something wrong, it's their fucking fault. You have to provide the infrastructure and the framework to go, what can we do as a business, and what can you do as a leader of that business to allow every single member of staff to thrive? If they don't thrive after that, then yes, maybe they are the wrong person for the business. But what can you do in a proactive way to give everyone the best possible chance and a fair outcome of being really good at their job? And this is the difference, you know, it's being proactive in training people and in seeing problems ahead of time and just nailing down the processes and systems of that business because you're being proactive ahead of time. Big difference. Number 3, a boss demands respect. A boss wants respect off everyone. They just demand it. They demand it as set tone, you know, they're just like, well, I'm the boss, so you should call me sir, and you should call me this, and you should address me in this way, and you should make me a coffee because I'm the boss, and you should wank me off because I'm the boss. And this attitude, it just stinks. It's just so like 1970s, like, because I've got the title and I've got a little card with my name on it and I'm the boss, that you should respect me. But respect is earned. You know, leadership, you earn respect from people by holding yourself as a leader. This is where this all comes back to, is holding yourself as a higher standard yourself. And you earn the respect from your staff because you do what you fucking say you're going to do, and you're fucking on it yourself. You cannot demand respect from people when you've got holes in yourself. You've got to earn it, and I think that's the best way of looking at it. You know, look at the military. They smash leadership. Why do they smash leadership? Because they train every day. They do what they say they're going to do, and they hold themselves to a higher standard. They don't ask people to do stuff that they haven't done themselves, and they've earned the respect from everyone below them. The chain of command, and this is what you want in a business, the chain of command. Anyone asking for something to be done, they've earned the respect of the people below them to do that because you've done it yourself, you've got the war wounds, you've got the experience, and you know what you're talking about, so you've earned the respect, and you've cultivated a really good team. So never ever demand respect, you always want to earn the respect with your staff. So ask yourself, have you earned the respect with all of your staff below it? And if you haven't, that's your problem with your leadership. Next one, ego-driven and know-it-all. So they're driven purely by well, I know best, so do what I fucking say. That sort of attitude. You know, the attitude of, well, what do you know? You know, and if someone can be 3 months into a job and come up with a really good idea, even though you've been into it 20 years, you know, fresh perspectives sometimes can be a massive benefit to a business. Time served does not mean quality of experience and decision making sometimes, you know. So removing an ego from it, the leader is always willing to learn and they're willing to be wrong. Happy to be wrong all the time. You know, if you react because you've been proved wrong, you have got an ego problem. You need to let it go and just be the better, stronger leader. I'm not letting that ego get in the way of because I see this all the time in mid-level management. We had a lot of struggle with this, is that someone brighter would come up with an idea and the mid-level manager wouldn't want to go with that idea or roll with that idea because it made them look bad, or they thought it was going to make them look bad, or they would try and pass it off as their own idea and you lose the respect of that person that actually came up with it. That's what ego does, and it destroys people. Whereas a good leader will take an idea from someone else and go, do you know what, that's a really good idea, let's try that, let's put it in place. I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to be proven wrong for the greater good of the business. And that's what it's all going to be down to, basically, is the greater good of the business, doing stuff easier, quicker, cheaper, more affordable, so you're boosting profits and you're running a good team. So you've always got to be willing to learn. Number 5, a boss thinks they can justify and get away with having low standards themselves and asking people to do things that they don't actually do themselves. There is nothing worse than someone in a boss position going, well, you haven't done this, you should have done this, and you should have done that. And it's like, should have. You could have done this, but they don't do that themselves. Like, it's just hypocritical. You know, you might have had a boss yourself when they ask you to do stuff, but they've never done it themselves before. They don't actually do what they say to do. And, you know, you really want to be, as a leader, have the highest standards yourself. You can't expect high standards from people below you, your employees, when you've got low standards yourself. Whereas if you've got really high standards as a leader yourself, you're impeccable, you've got no holes in you whatsoever, you set the bar, basically. You know, it's a massively different thing because you're setting that high standard, and then if you're asking someone else to do it, they can't question you because you do it yourself. So you can't ask staff to be on time all the time if you're not on time yourself. You can't ask staff to dress in a particular way or speak to customers in a particular way if you don't do that yourself. You can't ask staff to ask for help or deal with conflict if you don't deal with it yourself. Everyone is looking at you as the owner, and you know, this is the thing. Like, even like when you take kids, for example, they don't learn from what you tell them to do. They learn from what you do. So how you are conducting yourself and the standards that you set, all of your staff are watching that as well. So you can never ever be a strong leader and ask people to do stuff that you just don't do yourself. That's what a shit wanky boss does. They go, well, I'm the boss, so I don't have to do that. That is the worst attitude in the world. And you, subconsciously, you just think that person's a complete bellend, which is not what you want. You want to be a strong leader and people to go, oh, fucking hell, he's going to pull me up on that because he does this and he does that. And it's like, they've got nowhere to go. They've got nowhere to go because you do it yourself. You set the standard really high yourself. That's what a good leader does. Number 6. Negative language is used by a boss, and they use fear as well. They use fear to try and get people to do stuff. So they use fear in a sense of, well, if you don't do this, we're not going to do this. If you don't do that, we're not going to take you here. We're not going to do that. You know, fear all the time, and go, well, if you don't do that, I'm going to cut your wages. If you don't do that, I'm going to discipline you. If you don't do that, I'm going to sack you. And loose threats. It's the worst thing in the world. You know, you'll be picking up on things as I talk through this, and you've experienced it in your own life as well, of people that are like this, and they use empty threats to try and use fear to get people to do stuff. And it's just, people just see that as weakness because they go, oh, all he's going to do is threaten me this, give me a load of verbal abuse, jump on the phone, go mad, and then put the phone down. You know, believe it or not, there's people out there running their business like that and chatting to their staff like that, and even talking to customers like that, and using threats and empty threats, you know, fear-based negativity to try and get people to do stuff. That's what a shit boss does. Whereas a leader, you empower people and you give slack and you trust people. You're positive. Reading from the next line. You're positive and you've got a coach attitude. So you're more productive. Again, it's going back to being proactive, and instead of shouting at people and booting off and being negative and using fear, you actually sit people down and you go, you didn't quite handle that as you normally would. That job didn't go quite as well as it normally would. Is everything all right? What's going on with you? You know, and being that more positive and using that language and going, do you know what? The last 2 jobs, Steve, whatever his name is, chatting to a chippy, or you're chatting to a contracts manager in the office, something's not been quite right. Like, what's going on with you? Talk to me where you're at, what's going on with you, and having a proactive, open dialogue conversation, and going and just basically saying to people and going, look, I'm concerned things aren't going quite well. What's going on with you? Is there something I should know about? You know, and just having that completely different tact, you know, because sometimes someone might have some shit going on. So you've got to be that person and having that positive coach attitude, basically, because you are, again, this is what you signed up for. When you own a business, when you're an entrepreneur, you've got staff below you, you signed up to basically having to train your team and coach them all the time. So it's having that attitude all the time of coaching people, working with them, rather than just shouting shit down the phone or point, sending shitty emails. Be proactive, get on the phone and speak to people and go, what's going on with you? And just being so much more positive about it and going, come on, we'll get through this. If a job goes wrong as well, just shit does go wrong, the leader is positive about it and go, okay, well, we are where we are. What do we need to do to move forward? It's not sitting there negative and going, oh, you guys have caught this up again. You guys have done this again. If you'd have done this, we wouldn't be here. And all this sort of attitude. There's a time for that when all things are said and done. But when you're in the shit and you need something sorting out, you need to be a positive attitude of going, okay, let's roll our sleeves up. Doesn't really matter how we got here at the minute, but if a job's going physically wrong, or something's going wrong in the office, or whatever it might be, it's that case of, right, roll up our sleeves. How do we solve this problem right now in front of us? And how do we prevent it from happening again? That's what a leader does. A boss doesn't slag people off behind their back. It's that very much proactive, collective attitude of going, right, let's roll our sleeves up and let's get to work on this and let's be positive. Number 7, a bad boss doesn't let go, or they don't trust anyone. which basically means they're that micromanager. They never let go. They go, have you done that? Have you done this? Have you done this? How are you doing it this way? Why are you doing it that way? You know, down to a level of asking someone, why are you printing that on that paper? Why are you doing this? Why are you stirring your tea that way? You know, and just not fucking letting go of stuff. Like, you have to just let go and trust people to do their job, because there is nothing worse when you've got someone on your back all the time questioning why you're doing it. You know, people will always do things in a different way to how you will do them. Yes, they might not be as perfect or as quick as you doing them. You're not going to get employees that do everything exactly how you want, exactly at the same speed you do, and in exactly the same way that you do it. It's impossible. So you're going to set yourself up for failure. This is what a bad boss mentality does. Just having the wrong expectations. You've got to have the expectations of empowering people and giving them enough slack to do it their way. As long as it's done correctly, as long as the standard is good enough, as long as the quote's been sent out the right way, as long as the lad on site has done stuff that's to the right standard, that's good enough for the job. It might not be exactly how you would have done it, but you've empowered people and you trust them to get on with their job. You have to let go. When you've got staff below you and you want to be a leader, you have to go, okay, this is your responsibility. This is how I like things to be done. Off you go. But you give them enough slack that they can have the odd trip up, and people do. You've got to allow people to have the odd trip up, but not enough to hang themselves, but enough just to have a little bit of a graze on the arm. That's totally cool. That's totally normal, because then that person will learn and they will grow. And again, this is what I said earlier. You've got to have that coach mentality of letting people trip up a little bit. Obviously not at the expense of the business and things going majorly wrong, but a little bit of slack, and then you've just got to be there to pull it back in occasionally and just empower people to get on with their fucking jobs. It is the most infuriating thing in the world when someone's like standing over your desk or watching you cut something or fucking watching you fit something. As long as it's done to a good enough standard, that's what you've got to expect. You know, you can't have the wrong expectations and just not letting go and letting people do what they need to fucking do. Bad leadership all over. So, number 8, a boss rarely gives praise to people, and they give fake praise. And you've probably all had this when someone said, oh yeah, well done, you did really well there. And you fucking know, they're just saying it because they feel like they should say it. They don't mean it, and you just walk away going, you're an absolute helmet, because you've just said that because you feel like it's the right thing to say. People are very good intuitively of seeing fake bullshit and understanding people coming from a genuine place. And you know, you're not going to get very far if you don't recognise when someone's put some effort in and done something well. A good leader will recognise that all the time, is switched on to going, do you know what? Someone's really tried there. Even if maybe sometimes haven't worked out for you as a business owner. Maybe a job has gone slightly wrong, but the person's actually still worked really hard. Maybe you've just had a really difficult client, but your contracts manager or your person in the office, whatever, they still worked really hard and they've really, really tried. And a good leader will recognise that and go, look, this one didn't go our way, but I really appreciate what you did. You did this well, you did that well. And I recognise you really tried your best and your hard, but it just wasn't on our favour today. And that's just life, you know. Sometimes things are going to go wrong, regardless of you doing all the right things. Sometimes shit just goes wrong. And a good leader will recognise that when people have done really well, pull them to one side and put their arm around them and just go, do you know what, you've done really well. I really appreciate it. And do you know what? What I've found is most of the time, people are actually more loyal and motivated to stay when you just appreciate them and you just say thank you. It's the simplest thing in the world to do, but I have found that people appreciate that more than extra money or, you know, anything like that. Like, people just want to feel appreciated and used and part of the team. And when you just empower people as a leader and you recognise the effort from individual people, because obviously, you know, certain people have got way more potential than others. It's just facts of life. But when even if you recognise the small guy who's put the effort in, might be the labourer, might be the apprentice who's on his way up, if you recognise when they've done a good job and not just barking down at them when they've done a bad job, that's much better leadership than just being a shitty average boss. Number 9, bosses are not really personable. They're not people you want to talk to. If you've got a problem, you actually refrain from going to speak to them and asking them for help, which is the total opposite of what you want in structure in a business. You want people to happily come and communicate and come and talk to you and go, I think we've got a problem here. Because when you're not personable and approachable, people sit on problems, which is a fucking big problem for you. So you have to learn this mindset and again, this leadership mentality of not having that, not creating that culture. If you've got a culture where people are afraid to talk to you because you're going to flip off, or you're not going to be respectful, you're going to be negative, you're not going to be proactive in solving that problem, people will just sit on problems, and problems fester away and they become bigger problems. So you've got to be a personable, really approachable person as a leader. Doesn't mean you eat shit and you're too nice, because sometimes, leadership is people could come into you and you need to say to them, look, you've come to me with this problem 3 times. We've spoke about the result and you haven't changed. That's a different topic. That's a different scenario to solve. My point is, for the topic of this episode and this podcast, is if you're not personable and approachable to begin with, people will never come to you. And the best leaders, they've got the time in the world for people to come to them and go, I've got this problem, what do you think? And that's what the culture you want in a team. You'd rather people open, honest, and talking and communicating together as a whole, rather than sitting there, arms rolled up, tight-fisted, and go, well, I'm not going to go to him because he ain't going to fucking do anything. That's not the mentality you want in a team. Number 10, last one. A boss ignores feedback. How many times have you told a boss in your life, or someone that's been ahead of you, maybe even a partner, and you've said, look, we have got this problem. This is going to happen. This is going to go wrong. And the boss does nothing with it. They sit on it and go, yeah, well, we'll tackle that tomorrow. We'll look at that next week. Because it's not a big enough deal to them at the time. And they're just ignoring feedback and input from staff. That's what a bad boss does. There's nothing worse when you're going to someone with a problem and going, I think this is going to be an issue. I think we should do things this way. I think we could save time or money by this way. These are the people you want in your business. But what you don't want is you being a bad boss. We don't take that stuff on board. Because again, maybe it's the ego. Maybe it's identifying holes in yourself as the boss, and you don't want to take that on board. But leadership, you're always asking for feedback. You're always asking for input from staff, because your people on the ground know more than you. It's impossible. Once you build to a decent size as well, you've got multiple jobs on, you've got multiple teams, you've got multiple members of staff. You can't know everything. It's impossible. If you try and do that, you'll just blow yourself up. So your people on the ground know everything, and sometimes it's actually the smaller guys. But sometimes it's like the admin person. It's the low-paid guy who's watching stuff and clocked something and gone, do you know what? I think we're doing this wrong. I think we should do it this way. So the leader, you want to always ask for feedback and input from your staff, because they will just pick up on things that you just can't, and you just don't have the time to notice all the time. So always being approachable, asking for that feedback and input, that will give you the real results all the time. And it's just a genuine, open conversation all the time. And that comes back to the previous point of being approachable and having that culture in an office environment, on a site environment, where everyone can talk and everyone can have a voice. That's really what you want as strong leadership. So that's the 10 points I've got on the difference between being a boss and being a leader. I hope that makes sense. You definitely want to be a leader to get the best out of your team and grow the best business. If you like this episode, feel free, drop me a line on Instagram. It's at Dean Barton Real, or comment below if you're watching this on YouTube. It goes out on both, on all the podcast apps, as well as YouTube, as well as a video. But it's just really good to hear back from people and have genuine feedback. I go, yeah, I like that episode, I like this. So I can steer it and basically do more episodes on the topics that you guys like listening to. So that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening to me ramble on, and I'll see you on the next one. Bosh.